What's up guys, it's Will back again, and today's review is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is a Marvel superhero film that was directed by James Gunn and is the sequel to the highly successful 2014 film Guardians of the Galaxy. While Volume 2 picks up with our 5 Guardians of the Galaxy being hired to protect some valuable assets for a bunch of golden people referred to as the Sovereign Race. Once this job is completed, the Guardians head back into space, but eventually run into a mysterious man named Ego, played by Kurt Russell, who claims to be Star-Lord's dad. The Guardians head to Ego's beautiful and seemingly harmonious planet, where Star-Lord begins bonding with Ego in ways he's always dreamed of, but this bonding comes to a screeching halt when a sinister villain enters the picture. And the rest of the film is spent watching our Guardians of the Galaxy battle this villain in explosive and exciting fashion, while we also watch the Guardians themselves bond and exchange constant banter. Okay, so you guys know by now that I'm a huge Marvel fan. Who isn't these days, honestly? But I go see every Marvel film in theaters because I'm heavily invested in these characters, and I love to see how they're going to be further developed and how their individual stories connect to the bigger picture. And I love the first Guardians film. It's currently my number 3 Marvel film of all time, so needless to say, I went into Volume 2 with some lofty expectations because the original set the bar so high. And while Volume 2 isn't quite as good as the first installment, it's still really good. I loved it. There's a lot to really like about this film. Firstly, the humor. While there's definitely a more deliberate approach to being consistently funny than the first one had, the humor is very cleverly written in Volume 2 and doesn't ever feel overly family friendly, 2 words that are pretty popular on YouTube right now. But yeah, the humor in Volume 2 comes across as a little bit more focused and directed towards adults rather than kids. You can still take your kid to this movie and they won't be like scarred for life or anything like that, but there are a lot of adult jokes made in this film that are absolutely hilarious and at the same time pushing the boundaries of PG-13 humor and the general brand of Marvel humor. I will say that Volume 2 differs from Volume 1 in that considering it's a sequel, there's always that added pressure to go bigger and funnier, and because of this there are way more lines of humorous dialogue delivered in this film than there were in the original. Most of it is absolutely hilarious, but every once in a while there is a bit of a joke overload, especially in the first half hour or so. I also gotta say that I absolutely love this cast. Each actor is so well suited for their specific role, and the chemistry between the actors is outstanding from start to finish, just as it was in the original film. Everyone is fantastic, but in Volume 2 I gotta give props to Michael Rooker because Yondu was my favorite character in this movie. He's much more developed this time around, he's hilarious, and he's extremely likable in all his imperfections. Yondu quickly became one of my favorite Marvel characters after his outing in Volume 2. And just like I did in the first outing, I love Bautista in the role of Drax. Drax is the most likable character in these 2 installments because pretty much everything he says and does is hilarious. He's brutally honest, he's loyal, and he's just a fantastic character. So to transition to the story, I will caution you that this film isn't quite as much of an adventure as the first film was. Our characters go to a couple different planets and that's it. They're not traveling across the entire galaxy in order to stop a villain. They do get scattered, but it never quite feels like the same long journey like the first one did. And I didn't think that would be that exciting for me, but it really worked quite well because the story's elements such as the characters, the very well written dialogue, and the humor itself more than compensate for an adventure that's pretty confined for the most part. It also helps that the climax is so damn good that you'll forget about any deficiencies you might have noticed along the way. It's thrilling, it's absolutely stunning visually, and it's chock full of emotion. This is one of the best climaxes that has ever been delivered from a Marvel film because it's just so much fun. It's a well-paced, super engaging, and enjoyable ride. I loved it. So just to go a little bit deeper on 2 things I just mentioned. Firstly, the visuals. This is probably the most vibrant and colorful Marvel film to date. The first Guardians film did a really nice job expanding the Marvel offerings, especially in the visual department, and Guardians 2 further expands on those offerings by bumping up the vibrancy of the colors up another notch. The CGI work in this film is pretty damn remarkable. And the emotion, this is easily one of the most emotional Marvel films to date because there's an exploration of these characters, their flaws, and their innermost desires that digs a little bit deeper than a lot of other Marvel films have in the past. I was actually kind of surprised at how deep this film was going and how much further they were developing these characters in a little over 2 hours. And as you know, there's a lot of characters to work with here, and the way they juggle these characters is very impressive. In true Guardians of the Galaxy style, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the soundtrack. While it's not quite as memorable as the first soundtrack, it still adds so much style to this film. That old school 70s and 80s music vibe meshes so well with the style of the Guardians that I really just have to commend James Gunn and everyone else involved for having such a strong grasp of what they want this story to be. The music helps form that identity and enhances every scene in a number of different ways. But overall, I really did love Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I was kind of nervous about it going in, but I really thought it was great. I thought it had an amazing cast of characters with great chemistry, a consistently hilarious brand of humor, some extremely vibrant and beautiful visuals, and a fantastically diverse story accompanied by some great music. The only knock I have on this film is that sometimes there's joke overload. Regardless, I'm going to give Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 a 9.5 out of 10 and definitely recommend you check this one out in theaters. I think it has some pretty diverse offerings, so I think pretty much anyone can enjoy it. So did you guys see Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 yet? What did you think of it? And if not, let me know why not. And also let me know your favorite Marvel film of all time and whether you prefer Guardians 1 or 2. I'd say Avengers is my favorite Marvel film and Guardians 1 is just ever so slightly better. That's just me though. That's all for now though. This is WillFoxification signing off. See you in the next review.